Hey everyone, my name's Kyle Wallgren once again, and thank you for joining us on the Business of Education. Today, our guest, you might have recognized him in the media lately. His name's Jason Palmer. I reached out to him because of his massive role in education, but most importantly, he just finished or is currently working on a Democratic nominee for the 2024 presidential election campaign. Jason, welcome to the show.
Kyle, thanks for having me on. I'm excited.
I'm super excited. Like I'd mentioned, I wanted to have a conversation about education technology. I know you play a huge role in it. But curiosity always gets the best of me. You're currently or actively campaigning for a president or Democratic nomination for president. What made you decide to jump into politics at this point in your career?
It was a big part of it was watching the debates last year and just feeling like I was kind of embarrassed for our country. There were all these debates about, banning books from schools or transgender bathrooms. I said, you know what? I've been working in education for the last 30 years of my life, and that's not what we need to be talking about. We need to be talking about how people can get to middle class jobs if they just earn credentials in technology or data science or healthcare. We need to be talking about how our schools are completely disconnected from the world of work, and school needs to be a lot more fun, a lot more interesting for students. Like, it's overdue for a huge upgrade. And then as I got thinking about it and talking to my CEOs, I was like, would you vote for someone like me for president? And they all said, please, please, we need somebody like you who understands education, who understands technology, a younger person. And so I said, you know what, this could be the toughest beating I ever take in my life, but if I can change the national conversation, it's worth it.
You align with, ultimately how I think. I tell everybody, so I moved to the United States about 7 years ago on an investment visa. So I typically, sat on the other side of the table. But when COVID happened, I took a step back, and two of my kids were in Canada because I had been divorced, and that I was separated from 18 months from being able to cross the border. And
wow,
at that point, my daughter asked me to teach her how to read. And I looked at the landscape of where like audio or voice technology was on literacy and how big the literacy rates were. And it just scared the crap out of me. I'm like, if we've just sent all our kids home to learn from these parents that can't ultimately read, what is that doing to the educational gap in America? And I also, like yourself, I just heard all these people yelling. You know what I mean? There was no good information coming in. There was a bunch of people yelling, misinformation here, misinformation there, but you really didn't know where to get the truth from, right?
Yeah.
So I felt like if we could educate our kids better, they would have the ability to find out what the truth is for themselves. And I feel like from a political standpoint, and you kind of touched on it, that neither party is really representing the mass majority of America today.
Completely. I mean, that's partly why when I announced my campaign, I said, this is going to be a purple campaign. I'm running as a Democrat in the Democratic primary, but there are great ideas from all corners of the political spectrum. We need to stop yelling at each other and stop letting the 10% crazies on either end of the spectrum control the conversation. 80% of us are in the middle. We're pragmatic. We're solutions oriented. We need to take our country back. And, the more I said that, people said, are you willing to go out there and say they're crazies on both sides? And I said, absolutely. We all know that's the case. And they're controlling the conversation.
They are.
We need to have sane people who believe in common sense solutions work together to actually move the country forward. And more than ever, I think it's really resonating because Congress is so dysfunctional. I think they only have like 9%, approval rating or something like that. And, we need to take the country back.
That's so awesome to hear. And I ask people all the time because, eventually I will be a citizen. I am married and I have kids in America now. And, eventually I will get to vote one day. So I always ask people, like, pitch me on why you believe the way that you do, because I'm watching on the outside and I don't feel like anybody's talking to me there. When you came about, I was like, ooh, I can align with what Jason's trying to do here. And that was like so refreshing.
Thank you.
So I'm super excited to see where the conversation goes. We will try and stay off politics a little bit, but I know we're going to cover them.
You can weave it in a little bit, but
the big thing that I wanted to talk to you about, because the majority of our listeners are young entrepreneurs, and the foundation of my following, on my LinkedIn and my social media is education based. That's
Yes.
where the space that I live in.
Entrepreneurs are my people and education is my movement. So I get you. Yeah.
Yeah, and I felt like you were the leader. As I read your stuff, I'm like, man, this guy just hits on everything that's important today. Um, how'd you get into one? How'd you get into venture capital? But two, what
Yeah.
made you focus on education? Because that's like the least focused on space, I feel like, in the whole venture world.
Totally. I'm going to give you the medium length version on it. Okay. So
Okay.
spare me. So I grew up in an education family. My dad was a teacher. He was a math and physics teacher, and then he became a principal and a superintendent. And when I was in middle and high school, we used to bring home Apple II computers from school over the weekend so that I could learn how to use computers. And I ended up doing like charts and graphs for my dad's board meetings that said like, this is the percent of kids that went to college when he first became a principal, and it went from like 30% to 60% went to college. More kids were taking AP tests. More kids were actually like getting jobs right after we tracked all this stuff. Then I went to the University of Virginia and I was a government major, and I accidentally started a business, which we could talk about. It was a total accident. I started a business. I had to drop out of school. I was not Bill Gates. This was a very small business to help kids eat at restaurants around campus instead of at the cafeteria. But it was my business. And I ran that for 3 years. And then I ran another business to help students get their first job after college. And then I went to business school and I started another business. And the third business, which is very exciting to talk about, but I don't know if we'll talk about it today. I raised 22 million in venture capital and I lost it all. I failed spectacularly. I lost all the money that I had made on my first 3 businesses. And I went on like a 2-month sabbatical with my credit cards because I had no money left to try to figure out what am I going to do with the rest of my life. And on that trip, I came up with like a mission statement for the next 25 years of my life. It's the longer version of the story is I found out about these kids that had made mission statements back in 1976. And then if you make a 25-year mission statement, you can achieve incredible things was kind of the research's outcome. So I said, for the next 25 years, I'm going to work at the intersection of education, technology, and entrepreneurship and try to lift 1 billion people out of poverty. That's what I wrote. It's a sign that's been up on my wall. That's what I've been focused on for the last 23 years. And, it got all the way through like another business that kind of worked out mediocre, venture capital investments, getting laid off from a company after I did 3 turnarounds for them. I've always been focused on that's the mission. I'm trying to help 1 billion people through education, technology, and entrepreneurship.
I love that so much. Your story just reminded me of myself. Like I never wanted to be a business person. The difference was I got kicked out of high school. So like I worked in the oil field. I grew up in Canada. Oil field was kind of where you went. You can make a living. You don't know any better. You just go in.
It's just where you go. Absolutely.
It's just where you went. And then all of a sudden, my dad asked me to fix some concrete in his rental properties. And I was like, oh, I can do that. Next thing you know, he convinces me to start a concrete finishing company with him. This is 2008. I go and buy all the tools and equipment. I come to his house to tell him that we've got everything set up. I got the LLC done. I've got all the tools, all the equipment. And he opens the door to tell me that it's the financial crash and he just lost half his money. And it was like sink or swim. You know what I mean? Figure it out. So I did
Figure it out.
I've never had a job since, or I've never worked for anybody else since. I'm almost 40 now. So accidents happen for a reason. And, I feel like if you're willing to look at it head on,
yes,
you can make giant motions. In the intersection of education and technology, today we're seeing huge advancements with technology in school. COVID kind of brought it to the forefront of how much it can help. If we were to focus on what we learned in COVID only, what are some of the things that you're seeing from an investment thesis that were really easy spaces to capitalize on from the remote hybrid type learning positions?
Well, the ones that seem from COVID that are the hottest are, and I invested in a company called Credly during this time that did very well, is that there are these shorter programs that are 3 months to a year in length where you can get upskilled and a credential. and you can get a $50,000 to $200,000 a year job now. Like if I
Oh,
was,
wow.
that's during COVID, that took off, grew. Credly is up to something like 100 million people have earned credentials on that platform. And they're credentials you've heard of, like Google Analytics Certificate or Salesforce Administrator or, Google Cloud certification. These types of certifications, cybersecurity, data science, etc., they are worth a college degree. There's about 600 of these credentials that are worth a college degree. You can earn them in 3 to 12 months if you're really go-getter and you understand technology. And they're not just coding jobs. You could be like digital marketing if you're expert on Instagram. Like there's so many of these jobs now. And that blew up during the pandemic, especially because people were more online, people were more trapped in their houses. That was the number one trend. In K-12 education, there's a lot more money that's going to after school programs and summer programs now. That's been a huge one, partly because, and these programs are usually about STEM, or you could even say technology related programs, because the entire education system is kind of being transformed by like software is eating the world. All industries are becoming technologized in some way. And that's even reaching down into schools, where I've now seen second and third graders learning Python. And I thought,
Oh,
that
wow.
is the craziest thing I ever saw. But then I thought, well, they're good at learning languages and they like tech. So maybe it doesn't seem so crazy. Now I wish I learned Python when I was 8 years old or nine
No
years
doubt.
old, you know? So those are the big trends that I saw during COVID.
Now let's flip that over, because there was
Yeah.
a lot of investment during COVID into the ed tech space,
Yeah.
and a lot of that busted. What are the things that we thought we learned that really weren't there?
There's a bunch there. So there was a company that New Markets, my company, used to own a part of. We just sold it. Learn Platform got acquired by Instructure, but they track
Use
and
Learn Platform.
publish that. Yeah, it's a great company. They track and publish that there's something like 12,000 education technology programs out there now. And to put this in perspective, when I started 20 years ago with the EdTech investing and leading EdTech companies, there were maybe like 100 technologies. So it's gone from 100 to 12,000. It's kind of a little bit out of control. And there has been this past year a lot of companies that haven't made it. And why haven't they made it? Well, the big reasons are that a lot of companies that tried to change K-12 education didn't appreciate how slow change in K-12 education happened. It's like a battleship that's like turning on the planet Jupiter with massive gravity. It's very slow to change K-12 education. And so too many companies thought they were going to revolutionize K-12 education in 2 years, and it takes 10 years. And that's where a lot of companies died. A lot of other companies have died trying to bring like blockchain or Web 3.0 to education. And the timing is just off on that. That's like another 5 to 10 years away. Now, AI, it's an open debate right now. AI is going to change and already is changing K-12 education and higher education. But there are probably many companies that are going to lose their shirts in the next 2 years because they thought it would change overnight. And then there are a couple that are going to be billion-dollar companies too. And it's really hard to figure out which is which.
I appreciate the way that you said that. Timing. One thing that I've learned, timing is everything. No matter if you have a good business plan, a great product, if you don't have timing,
no,
you're doomed. I love the idea of blockchain and education. You're right. I agree with you. We're 10 years out. AI, with the rapid advancements in AI, how do you envision leveraging these technologies in the class? Where do you feel like they're going to be the most valuable, and where do you think they're going to slow down progress for kids?
Well, AI specifically is going to make everything more personalized for students. And people have been saying this personalized learning for a long time, but now it's really possible. But it's all about the use cases. So every time I talk to an entrepreneur who's working with AI, I say, stop right there. I want to know the use case. Who's using the product? How does it get used? How does the AI get implemented? And then how is their experience better? Like what result, what outcome is better because of the AI being embedded in the use case? And to be honest with you, about 90% of the entrepreneurs, it's a bunch of hand waving and we're still trying to figure it out. And those companies are going to struggle. You need to nail down the use case tight. It's exactly this college counselor who's working with 436 students per year. And now she can give them an email like on the day that they're actually applying. And that's the use case we're trying to get perfect. And I just made that one up. But they have, if they're that tight, I'm like, this entrepreneur might get it. This entrepreneur is on the use case really tight. But most of them are not.
I think, and so I've never raised venture capital until 2 years ago. I always built my businesses myself. I self-funded the companies that I bought.
Yeah.
So I'm learning in real time, and that's why I set up these conversations with people like yourself, is so I can learn faster. But I want the people that come to me with these questions to be able to help learn as well. You talked on like hitting the use case flat on the head. I see this with a lot of people that come to me that are missing it 100%, and I think
in
one of the
AI
things
or just anything entrepreneurship.
I think in their product entrepreneurship as a whole.
Yeah.
And I always hire mentors. I've got great mentors in my network, but one mentor came to me for like 6 months straight. And he's like, but I don't think you have product market fit. And I listed this product, I bet you 300 different ways until it took me how to figure out just answering that one question.
Yeah.
So I guess
everybody always thinks, all the entrepreneurs always think you have product market fit, but you don't have product market fit until you have so many people calling you or clicking the buy button that you can't fulfill it. That's when you really have product market fit, when there's so many people that want in and you can't solve it. And the bottleneck is now not on the sales side. The bottleneck is on the delivery side. That's when you have product market fit.
I love the way that you said that. That kind of opens me to another question. A lot of times in education space, I get the question like, how are you, with education being a relationship-based sales cycle, how are you going to scale sales in a relationship-based environment? What would you give for advice on answering a question like that?
This is the Rubik's Cube of this market. Number one, be solving a really top level pain point for your buyer. And top level means top 3 pain points, probably number 1 pain point. Number 2 is have a product that is so dirt simple to use that they can just self-serve, sign up, and start using it. Like, think about and even try to build a training video to train people how to use your product. And if it's longer than 1 minute, it's too complicated. Make it super simple to use your product so that someone can self-serve, sign themselves up, and their education organization. The best companies have a freemium premium model, which, by the way, 10 years ago, I would have not said that because that would have been the wrong business strategy 10 years ago. But now that is the right business strategy. And it's, that's basically it. Figure out the right price point, the 4 Ps, you got to still do all that, but make it dirt simple to use and solve a real key pain point.
I appreciate that. I'm going to circle back from the political conversation a little bit. You're committed to social impact investing.
Big time.
You were with the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation for a part of your career. When you become president, if it's not this year, it's going to be soon. So I just believe in
it's what you got. It's a really hard job to win. Let me tell you, it's really hard.
I think that I really do get that, but and I'm going to circle back and forth a little bit here. The reason Trump, I think, won was because a lot of people were frustrated with what the standard government looks like. 100%. And there was only one voice at that time to talk for all of us with that frustration.
Yeah.
Now I think there's enough people like yourself, Vivek came and put his hat in the ring. There's enough business people that are like, hey, wait a minute. They will accept a business-minded leader. Right. The country can strive with a business-minded business-minded leader. It's just now speaking to the right demographic. In one of the interviews that I watched of yours, you wanted to focus on bringing the country together.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And I think that that's the number one thing that they need to address. Trump isn't doing it. Neither is Biden. They don't care. They just want to create more divide. And everybody from my generation, I feel like, is waiting for somebody to come with a real solid plan to meet in the middle. I think that's why RFK is still in the conversation, because he can talk to those people. whether it's a real possibility or not, he's still
Yeah.
in the conversation. And I think because he's talking to that separation of anger. Everybody's tired of being angry.
Everybody's tired of saying enough.
Yeah.
And I am announcing this week that I'm launching a new organization, and I don't know if actually you might know about it because it has leaked out a little bit. It's going to be called Together.
I've got it written down. It's one of my next questions.
And the goal is to bring the country together. We're going to try to get 1 million more young people and entrepreneurs and cause champions registered to vote. We're going to try to get 20 people elected who have kind of a purple orientation, problem solvers, former entrepreneurs as well, young people. And, this might be a 10-year, enterprise. Maybe it's going to be another 25-year thing. And I should put a new plaque up on the wall. But like to bring the country together, focused around real solutions, moving the country forward, 21st century problems. We do not have time to keep arguing about 20th century debates. Those are in the past. No. Let's let the 80-year-olds argue about that. We got a country to build and a world to make better for everybody.
And I keep saying, like, if you guys are going to hang your hat on there, you've missed the majority of the audience to those old ideas. You know what I mean? Things have changed. Yeah. I heard you say this. Laws have changed. Time has changed. It's time to change laws. It's time to change policies.
Absolutely. Yeah, some of these laws haven't been updated for 30, 40, 50 years, and we should be measuring their impact every 5 and 10 years. And if it's not working, that law is gone, it's out, or it's upgraded to a new law. Like, we need to get into some agile development cycles here with our government. We can't be moving at the pace of 50 years at a time on some of these laws.
No, and I think we're seeing that in, like, what you're saying right now is about to resonate in real time, because we're seeing all these like stories in New York with like squatters and stuff like that. Yeah. And those laws were put in to protect landlords back in the day, but the law is so old.
Right. I just saw this about people like squatting for a month and then suddenly they own your house.
They own your house.
Like, that doesn't make any sense at all. No,
not at all. No. So with your commitment to philanthropic endeavors and everything, when you get elected for president, how are you going to implement and commit to some of these policies to make sure that we're headed in the right direction with these? The way that I want to say this is with things that are normally identified with foundational resources, but doing it from a for-profit type position.
Well,
does that make sense?
Yeah, it does make sense. We need to run the government more like a business. And some people that have been in politics their whole lives kind of recoil at this idea. But if a business lost money for 22 years in a row, the CEO and all the management would be out and we would have the turnaround crew in there. Mm-hmm. And that's what's been going on with the current duopoly in Washington. And so what we need to do is we need to really clearly, for all the $1 trillion, there's about $1 trillion that's spent on government services right now. We need to have clear goals for what it's trying to achieve in terms of reducing homelessness or reducing poverty or, helping people get a college degree, whatever that particular law is for that particular objective. And we need to measure it every 5 years and report to the American people, how is this law doing? Is it working or not? And same thing for government agencies too. Like, we need to give a grade for our government agencies. How are they doing? How is HUD doing? How's the Department of Agriculture doing? Measure it by asking the people who are served by that organization. Are they serving you well? Treat citizens like customers. This is not a radical idea. This is a very simple idea that is long overdue.
Jeff Bezos focused on his customers, and now Amazon's like the most widely used company in the world.
Totally. And the federal government has so many more resources than Amazon did in its early days.
I think everybody listening is going to agree with you on a lot of things, but I'm going to ask you something that I heard you say in an interview today when I was doing some research that kind of made me take a step back.
Okay.
And you said that if you're not nominated to be the Democratic nominee, you're going to support Joe Biden because he's the Democratic nominee and we need to beat Trump. I'm okay with the we need to beat Trump thing. What I'm confused about is why it's important that it's the Democratic nominee and not just the person that fits who you stand for the best. And the reason I'm asking for this is because a lot of the people that I talk to, you ask them why they're a Democrat or why they're a Republican, and they're like, well, my parents were. You know what I mean? Or they really don't understand.
Automatic or knee-jerk type thing. Yeah.
They really don't understand who it is. And when I looked at your foundations, and I brought this up earlier, your key foundations are education, healthcare, and climate change. to me, from the outside looking in, you align with RFK better than you align with both other policies. So why one over the other? Why not an independent? Can you tell me why?
Yeah. I'll give you the long answer on that because that was a really thoughtful question. So I have voted for Democrats in the past and Republicans in the past. I voted for Larry Hogan for governor here in Maryland. He's a Republican. Then I voted for Wes Moore. He's a Democrat. Most of my life, I've been a Democrat, but I've also been a registered independent at some points in the past. And I think I resonate more with an independent label, actually. That's partly why I chose purple as the color for my campaign. And this whole good ideas come from all sides. Now, I was listening carefully to see like which interviews you might have listened to, because in this particular election, like Together is going to be welcoming. The new organization is welcoming of Republicans, Democrats, independents. We're even going to be, we think, the first PAC that actually donates to both Democrats and Republicans from the same pot of money, because we want to elect common sense people who are more geared towards the middle, more geared towards business and solutions. But in this particular election, the 70 million people who voted for Donald Trump, I want you to know, I understand you and care about you. You want the government to run like a business too. Mm-hmm. And when you voted for Donald Trump, you thought he would make the government more efficient. And in some ways, he did make it a little bit better, actually, for a while. And then in COVID, it kind of all went to pot. And how much of that is his fault and how much of that is COVID's fault, like that's a whole debate. But this time around, it's just true that Donald Trump is not the right person for our country. Nope. And so Joe Biden is the lesser of two evils, to be honest with you. And that's why I lean towards Joe Biden. Also, I am running as a Democrat. And I do think when you run in the primary of one particular party, you should support the nominee. It's sort of a traditional thing. But does that mean I'm going to be a Democrat the next time around? I'll look at the candidates. I'll choose who I think is the best, or it might be myself again.
I really think that you can make some headway. I think that RFK opened up the idea or opportunity for a third party. I think that people would really welcome that idea if it was really well thought out and really structured properly.
I definitely, I want to go even a little further on that. People don't all know because it's, it wasn't broadcast to more than 1 million people, but I moderated a third party debate about a month ago in New York City that had a Green Party candidate, 2 libertarians, a socialist. I'm friends with Andrew Yang, or maybe friends is a little strong. We're like acquaintance friends. I like Andrew and he likes me. And he's starting another party called the Forward Party that's going to be endorsing candidates. So I do believe we're in for a reckoning where if the 2 major parties don't evolve quickly to be 21st century parties, one of these other parties will become a dominant party in the next 4 to 8 years, or a new party altogether.
And I love that you brought up Andrew Yang. I do recommend everybody who is like young, under 50, just go do some real research. Cause like Andrew wanted to implement the international money thing where everybody gets paid. What was that called?
It's called, oh my gosh. It starts with an I, but it's not international. It's income, basic income.
Universal basic income. Yes.
Universal basic income.
And when I first heard, transparency, the lady that runs our PR is best friends with Evelyn. I've got to dive into some of his stuff. And when I was past this universal basic income idea, I was like, that is retarded. Like that is the stupidest thing I've ever heard. And then I read his book.
Yeah.
And
did it change your mind a little bit?
It changed my mind a lot. You know what I mean?
Like, a lot even. Yeah.
I just don't know if it's worth the investment to go retrain 60-year-old people to go, learn a new trade. There was a lot of stuff that made me think differently. And I was 100% set in my way prior to reading his book that this is dumb. It's never going to work. And then by the end of the book, I'm like, I think that could work maybe. You know what I mean? So
that's a sign of a good book and a good persuasion.
So I can't stress this enough. Just do research on everything you hear. The media is our worst enemy. Our mainstream media is our worst enemy. I love podcasts because you get to hear it.
It's longer form. You get to really understand where the person comes from. I love, podcasts are the best.
Before we run out of time, the one question that I ask everybody is, how important is your network?
Your network is super important to your success in life. I usually use that to talk about social capital with young people. How deep are you? You're pretty deep in social capital. So social capital is at the very micro level, it's who's the person you could text and they would text you back right away. Or if you said your car had died and you need help, they would immediately help you. Like there's 5 or 10, maybe even 20 people in your life who would immediately like go out of their way and do whatever to help you. And then what's the circle of people that would help you get a job? 8 out of 10 people get their jobs through personal networking. Even now with LinkedIn and all these other ways to find jobs, it's still much about personal connections. And then it goes out from there. There are deeper and deeper rings. Like I am so connected to the 10,000 people in the EdTech space that like, I do think if I said, I need a place to stay, I'm coming to your town, I think like half of them would say, yeah, you could stay in my guest room. And it's because I give to that community. I care about that community. And, you know, that network that you have of people who you are in social capital connection with, like, you know, that's how a lot of community exists in our world right now. It's not just your neighbors. It's like these people in your virtual space with you who are your friends and your social capital. That's how the world runs.
And I want to point out one thing that you said, just in case anybody missed it. A lot of relationships, people look at relationships, what can you do for me? But the thing that you said that stood out to me is that I have helped that industry so much that people would be willing to ultimately return the favor. So I just don't want people to overlook that. Kindness goes a long way in this world, and
it's so much more than kindness. I got to tell a story of Eleanor, who's one of my CEOs now. So Eleanor, I didn't even know that was the same person. So like back when she was 23, 24 years old, she was in business school and she said she wanted to get into EdTech, and she asked some people, you know, who could I ask for advice? And I was one of the people that got put on her list, and I ended up talking to her for like 30 minutes. And I told her the story about having a personal mission statement, 25-year vision, and da-da-da. Disappeared. Never heard from Eleanor again. I've talked to like 100 college students and people going to grad school like this. And then like 6 years later, we're chatting. Eleanor is one of the companies I've invested in. And she said, you don't even remember, do you? I'm like, what are you talking about? She's like, you're the one that gave me this advice 8 years ago when I was in college. Do you remember? And I was like, oh my gosh, you're one of the people I talked to. I didn't even know that. But now I'm an investor in her. And, you know, what goes around comes around. It's like karma to the karmeth power, if such a thing could exist.
So I normally don't ask this next question, but just so people don't blow you up on LinkedIn, I normally ask, how do people get a hold of you? But before I ask that, I want you to state what kind of companies you invest in, so you're not getting spammed with all kinds of things that are too early, too late.
I love to invest in companies that are education or workforce technology companies. So impact companies trying to improve education and workforce that have between 1 million and 10 million in revenue. So you're early stage, but you're not absolutely seed stage. Now, those of you that are seed stage, if you go out there and you look, Jason Palmer, seed stage investing, there's a whole 3-page article I wrote on a website out there that actually got published by 2 other websites that has 700 EdTech seed stage investors and their email addresses. So you can go reach out to seed stage investors. But the ones I like have 1 to 10 million in revenue. You've been around for a few years and you're ready to scale. That's my favorite type of company to invest in.
I love that. And then if they wanted to get a deck or a presentation in front of you, how do they go about doing that?
The best way to do that is to connect with me on LinkedIn, and then I'll give you my email, and then we'll go back and forth. And
there also is a link on the website, just for those that want to take that
too. But the truth is, we only invest in about 1.5% of the companies that we talk to. It's harder to get a new markets investment or a Jason Palmer investment than it is to get into like Harvard or Stanford. It's really hard, but I'll do my best to try to give you, positive love and introductions along the way.
I appreciate that. Jason, thank you so much. I've got a million more questions, but I promised you we wouldn't run too long, and we're already close to that time. So thank you.
Awesome. Kyle, it was great talking to you, man.
Thanks.